Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of How It Works. As you all know, I interview some of the biggest names in the world, and we do have this segment of How It Works. Ironically, the last three How It Works are now industries that I now happen to get involved in. So I don't know if I'm going to get involved in, but a lot of you have asked me about this particular topic, or I've been curious myself. COVID has changed a lot of things, right? The pandemic, and especially in the technology field, but also in the medical field in some cases, and specifically in the birth of children. I know this for a fact, so people were not even able to go into hospitals to watch the birth of their children because of COVID. And so the spouse or the woman was in there all by herself, where traditionally you'd have husband and family and everything like that, and that changed. And so people were now looking at alternatives, which sounded really crazy, really, why would you do this? To now becoming more mainstream. And so, I don't know much about the industry. So we found like a woman who probably knows more about this than just about anybody. He's number one in Australia, but has been hailed all over the world for this. And it's an interesting interview. So Tanya Cawthorne, welcome. And she has a website, which is, I believe is birthright, birthwell, birthright.com. Did I have that right?
Correct. Yep,
All right.
That's great. Thank you.
Hopefully you understand my uncomfortableness about this. It's like talking about sex is uncomfortable. No, this is not sex. This is a whole other level of
Right.
complication.
So although something that we've all experienced one way or another.
Yes, but
being born or giving birth.
I mean, listen, I have to give full credit to women. Men would complain, cry. Like you ever see a man that's sick, it's the end of the world. A woman's sick, they stop to take care of the man and all the children as well. So, well, first of all, just a little introduction, who you are, put this in context. I didn't really want to read your long bio because it was very long and they tend to sometimes just reading bios are not that. Just tell us a little bit about yourself to put context to this interview.
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, my name is Tanya Cawthorne. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia. I have a pretty international background, though. I actually was born and raised in Hong Kong. Lived there for most of my life. I lived in other places around the world. I guess this work, the birth work, the childbirth education and doula work and everything came to me quite late career-wise. I worked in marketing in the performing arts for many, many years. So I think if I had sort of been able to see my future self, I don't think I would have believed what I would have ended up doing for work. But I have two kids of my own, a boy and a girl who are now 10 and 11. And it sounds a bit cliche, but I think certainly having kids really quite fundamentally changed me as a person, but also changed my values and my goals in terms of what I wanted to do with my life. I think as well, going through that experience personally made me aware for the first time in my life, of a system that I was completely ignorant of, to be honest. Until you have kids, it's like this other universe that you don't have any awareness or understanding of until you're kind of in the middle of it. And I was lucky. I had good childbirth education that prepared me beforehand. It was still, intense, overwhelming, frightening, anxiety inducing, but I think I came through it relatively unscathed because of the good education and preparation that I had had. And I think that was kind of what was lay the foundations for my own, kind of shift professionally. Fast forward, a decade and a bit, and as you said, this is really my life. I teach Lamaze childbirth education, which in the States, Lamaze is a well-known name, not as well known in Australia, but I'm working hard to change that. And I'm also a birth doula. So for people who aren't familiar with the term doula, we are essentially birth attendants or birth support people. So we're not doctors, we're not midwives, we're not labor and delivery nurses. We're there to support the mother, her partner as well, which people often kind of forget that we're there to emotionally support partners as well. And really to help guide women through, the emotional journey of pregnancy and birth, but also, be their advocate in the room, help them to navigate that system, help them to make good decisions, informed decisions about their care, as well as the physical comfort aspect of labor support as well.
So are we talking about in hospital, or are you talking about birth at home?
Look, both. Obviously, COVID, as you said, has changed that to a large degree this year. But look, certainly
what's your majority before COVID? Because now you can't go further than 5 kilometers from your home. Right. So that's changed a little bit. But before COVID, what percentage of you provided a service where it was birth at home versus at a hospital?
Look, it was still absolutely overwhelming majority of women giving birth in the hospital. Here statistically, it's probably very similar to the US in that it's about 99% of women giving birth in a hospital. We have a different maternity care system here. So we have essentially what we call a midwife-led model of care. So primarily, if you're a healthy, low-risk woman, you will be cared for the most part by a midwife. And if there's a complication, an obstetrician would kind of be involved in your care as well. But certainly since COVID, there has been I would say almost an explosion in the interest, certainly in home birth as an option. I think in a weird way, there's been a kind of an unexpected silver lining with COVID, because I think for the longest time, home birth has kind of been shrouded either in mystery or in myth. People assuming that home birth is a reckless or a dangerous choice. Despite the fact that we've had scientific research and evidence for decades, which has shown the contrary. Obviously, it's not suitable for everybody, but I think this experience this year has shown that it's actually a very valid choice for many women.
So it's the fear of what if something happens, right?
Right, exactly. Not in the hospital setting. You don't have access to emergency care. The what ifs. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go from a business standpoint, because is it fair to agree that you didn't invent the category, but you kind of created your own job opportunity, right? So in a way, you kind of created your own niche. And in business, that's often sometimes very difficult to do.
Yeah.
To create our own niche, because, and so, in most of your cases, business would be referrals, but how do you market yourself? Because I think a lot of people start because I don't know if they're Googling it. They may be curious about it. The information is free. There's tons of free information about education on this. There's YouTube videos as well. And you're going in there, and it's kind of like you're selling insurance in a way, right? But insurance that no one ever thought would get. I'm there for support in case you need it, and to convert and be it feels like I'm going to give you money, or I have my grandparents, I have my family, I've got my inner circle, I've got my friends, and then you're a stranger as well. So talk about the economic aspects of the business of this type of thing, because it's not easy. I mean, business is hard enough that you basically made it very hard for yourself.
Yeah. Look, you're right in that there is just a almost never-ending source of information online, and to a degree, women are still relying, I think, on free information from Dr. Google. But what I think is becoming more evident as time goes on is that that's not sufficient. Women are entering a very complex care system. They are concerned about things like interventions. They're concerned about unnecessary treatments. They're concerned about, obviously, ultimately their health and well-being, and that of their babies as well.
How do you get the women to pay, to translate that information? Says, what, pay me. I mean, so what do you charge to go to the hospital and provide comfort, let's say?
As a doula? Well, it's in Australian dollars, which is about 1,800 Australian. So it's probably about 1,400 US, thereabouts. So that involves some prenatal care.
Expensive for something that, and I'm sure, is it from just, obviously, is it from a time period, or just to show up at the hospital?
No, that would include both prenatal visits with the client at her home. preparing, for the labor and birth, being on call for her as well. So from about 2 weeks either side of her due date, I'm essentially on call, which means I'm available 24/7 to her. I typically will also go to her home prior to her being in sort of that stage where she's ready to go to the hospital. And then of course the many hours potentially in hospital with her, and then some postnatal care as well. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hours, even though, it seems like a lot of money. I think what is convincing women to pay for this service is they recognize the value.
Is it first
They
child,
recognize
second child, or third child? Because after the first one, do people say, I got it? So it becomes more of a first child?
Not so much. I would say that would be the case with childbirth education. Once people have done a childbirth course with their first baby, they kind of feel like, I've got this. I don't really need to learn the stages of labor and what happens after you come home with the baby stuff. But every labor and every pregnancy is unique, has different set of circumstances and potentially challenges. So there's no guarantee that, just because you had a really great birth with your first one, you're going to have a textbook labor with your next one. So doula work is one of those, areas within this field where, repeat clients are actually, a very big part of your business model. People form a very intimate relationship with you. It's a relationship of intimate trust. And when they fall pregnant again, they're like, well, I'm calling my doula because that's who that was my rock in the last pregnancy and I need her again. So, it is word of mouth. It's very reliant on that referral kind of network. But look, with marketing as well, I mean, I never thought that I would use my marketing background in this work, but it's proved invaluable. So to being able to do my own, writing and social media and everything, all of that's important. It's like any business. You have to really dedicate yourself to the grunt work in order to be able to obviously, enjoy a sort of financially sustainable business.
When you call people, are they like, let's say they're interested, they haven't used you before. Are they on the fence, they're not sure, or they know when they call you that they're going to use you?
I would say most people, when they call me, know they want a doula, or they're at least very, very keen they want one. Typically, women will meet with or interview with several doulas before they kind of settle on who they ultimately want. It has to be a really a good fit, both, not just for the woman herself. Like I, as a doula, need to feel that I have a connection with the client as well. So
but I could tell you're a good salesperson. I could tell you're a good salesperson. You should move to America because you're not the typical Australian. Probably people have accused you of being American because I could tell you could sell well. You talk a very good game. And I'm sure you back it up. So I'm not saying that, but I could tell like you have this picture of this nice woman who just is kind of comforting, but you got to pull the sale to obviously get them, especially if you're competing on price and the guy wants the cheapest as possible. The woman's like, well, I like her. I have a good vibe with her. You know what I mean? So you got that.
Sometimes I'm selling it to dads full stop. They're like, what do we need a doula for? We've got an obstetrician, we've got this, yeah.
And also we have to pay while the healthcare is free. That's another objection that I get. How many clients doulas a year would you do? Like,
look, I could, again, when we're able to go into the hospitals, it's a lot more, but I would say 3 to 4 clients a month. Yeah. So, it's usually a pretty steady stream of inquiries and I often need to, make sure I carve in some off-call time so that I'm not constantly going to bed with my phone on at night.
Now, what about classes? So let's say you wanted to come to America. I'm just putting out there, and you want to do your classes, right? And I imagine a lot of them are online or Zoom. I looked in America. I looked in Canada. There's a lot of them as well. There's a lot of them as well. It's very crowded. Everyone's and many of them are free too. The hospitals offer them for free. There's a lot of these frees, and then many of them tried to pay as well. Is it hard to penetrate the child education component of it? If you were just say like, even though I'm in Australia, I'm going to go into America and I'm going to provide this education services. Is it really hard? And how would you penetrate that market? Because number one, you have no one like when you're marketing cold. You don't know who's having a baby, who's not having a baby, and you can spend a lot of money marketing just like that as well. You're
Yeah.
trying to build relationships, but you're from Australia, so you're not meeting face to face as well. So
Yeah.
is it normal for someone on the outside, and then you're Australian as well? You know, some people say, well, you know, we're Australians, we're Kiwi, there's an advantage of us in America. I don't know. Americans like to learn from Americans. While
Yeah.
Kiwis and Australians are a bit more open to international flavor, there's that American, even though clearly doesn't matter whether it's health or fitness or childbirthing, it's more or less the same everywhere in the world. But
Yeah.
people have this cultural block
Yeah.
sometimes as well. So would you think you'd be able to do it in America, or it'd be like much harder in another country?
It's a great question. And it's funny because I think Australians also kind of suffer from this, almost, I won't say cultural cringe, but, it's funny when with Lamaze being such a well-known name in childbirth education in the US and many places around the world, it was not well known here. And in fact, when I moved back from overseas about 8-9 years ago, I was the only Lamaze certified educator in the entire country. And that's changed because I also now train educators. So I travel across Australia and run educator training seminars. And that's been obviously a great additional boost to the business as well. So I teach and train. But, I think that was one of the barriers for me starting out was people would say, oh, Lamaze, isn't that an American thing? Isn't that like from the TV and from Hollywood movies and stuff? And all the materials were very US centric. So that was for me over here, a big barrier to overcome to kind of Australianize things so people felt it was something for them locally. I wonder whether, if it was me to sort of transplant myself, in the US or another place, maybe I would be able to get away with this sort of novelty factor of being kind of, from overseas. I don't know. But you're right. It is a crowded market. It's a crowded market even in non-COVID times when everybody's offering some class or another. I think what I would say to that is that, when you look at statistically how many women are actually accessing childbirth education, be it free in the hospitals or paid with private educators, we're still looking at only about 50% of all pregnant women accessing childbirth ed. So there's already, far more, pregnant women than there are classes, right? It's really about, I think, getting inside the head of women and understanding their needs. It's like anything in marketing. It's like if you can solve someone's problem, right? You can sell to them.
But
And
also by getting noticed to solve that problem, as you know, is another thing.
right.
The same thing would be at performing arts. You could be a great artist or a great show. Nobody knows about it. But obviously, if it's Andrew Lloyd Webber's production, then that comes back to that branding component of it, which makes it so much easier.
Yes.
So much easier. In any industries, a lot of people make a lot of money, and then there are people who don't make any money, for that matter of fact. In your industry, what's the most amount of money someone can make? And give me Australian dollars, I can do math. Or in the industry where you've seen that like can really make a very, very good income at this, top of the food chain.
Look, I think probably the most important thing, and I tell this to women who do training with me, be it childbirth educator training or doula training, that if they want this, if their vision is for this to be their full-time, business and to essentially make a living out of what they do, doing just the one thing is unlikely to be able to, to retire anytime soon. And you can do the math. Even if you do 4 births a month and you charge top dollar, sort of, $1,800, $2,000 a birth, there's only so many births a year that you could possibly do without burning yourself out, in no time. Childbirth classes are easier. You could be teaching, several days a week and weekends and stuff. But again, it's that work-life balance, right? And there is an upper limit of what you could, realistically charge a woman or a couple to attend a childbirth class. And over here, that would probably be around the $600 mark, which I know compared to the US is a lot higher.
Well, I think, yeah, because I saw 149 for a weekend, 47, 197. So Australians always overpay for things. Like a Coke for you is like
Right.
$4.50. For us, it's 99 cents. So, and they say
Right.
it's an
Right.
island.
Pizza, absolutely.
Right. But they say it's an island. But you know what? Indonesia, it's less than $1. So that's an island too. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that is true. I mean, it's funny. I mean, same with my training costs. I mean, there are Lamaze educator trainers in the US, and what they charge for a seminar compared to what I charge for a seminar is just, it's completely different ball game altogether. So yeah, what I would recommend to people who, you know, who do have a vision to kind of really make this a sort of a viable business, is you've got to have a few strings to your bow. So if you're going to do childbirth education, that's great, but maybe consider doing doula work as well. Or if you have interest in some kind of allied health, you know, be it pregnancy massage or, you know, whatever else it might be. But I've found that the women over the years that I've trained who've really risen to the top and have made for themselves fantastic businesses are those who've kind of got their fingers in a few pies. They're all related and they all complement each other.
Well, they can create multiple sources of income, or you get into one and you can sell them others after
Absolutely, including, you know, passive income as well. And I think that COVID has really highlighted the need for us to diversify our income streams, and to use the internet in a much more creative way. So for example, you know, a couple of years ago, actually, I was teaching an in-person course, and I thought, you know what, I could do this as an online course, which could be self-paced. People could do it anywhere in the world, and, you know, in their own time and from their living room. You know, and that has definitely picked up, you know, during COVID again, because the availability of in-person classes has all but come to a grinding halt. But women still have babies. Women still need education, and women still need support. So COVID or no COVID, you know, that those factors don't change. So I think it's been very interesting seeing, you know, friends of mine, relatives whose businesses, you know, have really suffered during this year. It's been really hard to watch. We all have friends who, you know, who have really had a very, very tough time. And it's not that I haven't had a tough time. Of course, you know, my business has been impacted like anyone's. But it has shown me that of all the potential businesses I could have gone into in my lifetime, you know, kind of whether it was from above or whatever, I pick something that's fairly immune, even pandemic immune, because life goes on for people.
Last question. You're in marketing. Can you really do, I mean, obviously there's the website, there's SEO, article writings, you know, guest spots. I mean, there's a million, those are very organic type thing. But can you really pay for marketing and do some Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and really get a rate of return on your money when it's really hard to target, because you just don't know who's going to give birth? And in a way, it's more of a, you got to go and you got to go fish yourself, but you can't really wait the fish to come to you. Because, you know, so is that correct? Like, it's really hard to do your own advertising on social media to get clients.
Well, look, I always have. I've never paid anyone to do any marketing for me. And again, maybe I'm fortunate in that I have unusually a background in that. So
right, you're also known, so you know this industry, you know marketing. Can someone just starting out or wants to go into a different market, has been doing it before, can they spend money on social media to get this?
If you were a new business, I would not recommend that people sink a whole lot of money into an external, you know, marketing, you know, sort of service or somebody to do socials for them or SEO, unless that person had a really intimate understanding of, you know, the birth world of pregnancy, and that is a really sub niche kind of area of marketing and communications. So if you can find someone like that, amazing. And maybe there's a whole other, you know, marketing opportunity for somebody listening that wants to kind of, you know, work in a very specialized area of marketing. But I think what I found over the years, marketing, social media is essential. You have to be on it all the time. You have to spend hours on it, which, you know, for people who hate that, and you'd be surprised, a lot of people who are very drawn to birth work have an almost visceral you know, like hatred of social media. That a lot of them don't even want to be on Facebook or Instagram. Like, well, if you don't want to be, then you're going to really struggle to build a business.
Yeah, and then also you want people to say tag you and stuff like that. I mean, you make a good point. I mean, unfortunately, this is the type of business that you've been there a long time. And if people are going to take business away from you, they got to go and make a lot of calls, talk to a lot of people, you know, get in on referrals, take care of people
Yeah.
back and infiltrate that, because that, you know, unfortunately, there's no tag with "I'm expecting a baby." And if there was, it would be just easier just to market those things.
Right.
And
Look, in
and
some
you could
ways, it's
do, I
quite
mean,
an yeah, as I say, it's quite an old-fashioned business in some ways, in that face-to-face relationship building is really essential. And if you wanted to build your referral network with other providers, be that obstetricians or midwives or chiropractors or massage therapists or whoever, you know, an email or a tag on Instagram is not going to cut it. You know, you need to know those people personally and really invest the time in developing those relationships. And they have to be authentic relationships. I think people can smell BS a
they don't
mile
have that.
away, you
Yeah.
know, so they
No, the
have to
problem
be
is
real.
if you have no BS when you're doing that, chances are that's going to translate into your relationship with selling with the mother and also the family as
With the
well.
client, ultimately.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm fascinated. By the way, you never thought you'd be interviewed on a big show in America, all over the
No.
world, and I never thought I'd be interviewing this. But you know, at the end of the day, I think the lesson that people need to learn: business is business, and the product may be different. This is a difference, but it's still relationship. It's still
Absolutely.
follow up, and it's also making sure that, and also too, if you didn't do a good job, you don't get repeat business, which means you got to work 10 times harder. And that's why you have to make sure. And then it's also encouraging your clients to have as many babies as they can, so that you can. So the more babies they
Having
can follow,
babies.
yeah, they have, and then maybe give them a discount after that. So thank you so much, Tanya. You were
Pleasure.
absolutely amazing. Thank you for opening up about your industry, um, and it's fascinating to find commonalities in business and just about anything. But I'll say you'd be good at anything you do. So you know, so maybe when they open your borders 10 years from now and you open up to a
I
whole new.
can't wait to get back to the US. I come a couple of times a year for my work with Lamaze, and I miss it a lot. I miss seeing my friends. So yeah,
No,
I can't wait to get on a plane.
it's a crazy world, and it's just I don't know. It's just you know, it's conflicting. 2020 was a year that I can't wait for 2021. It's really how I would describe
I'm
it.
with you on that one.
Well, thank you so much for being on. That's a wrap. That's how it works. Who knows? I might start another business, 61, and I don't know if I get into that. I don't know. I'm sure I put her face on there, but I'll figure it out. Thank you, Tanya.
You're welcome.